Hey, everybody, it's Scott Leckie from Democracy Tomorrow. Today we have two special guests, two excellent authors and friends of mine who have just come out with a new book called Metal Viper, which is a novel about contemporary Myanmar or Burma. There it is right there, you can see. Published by Indies United, the wonderful publishing house that it is. And we have with us today the two authors, the co-authors of this book, Ron Schultz and Sarah Lovett. And so welcome to Democracy Tomorrow, friends.
It's great to be here, Scott.
Thanks, Scott. Great to be here.
So Sarah, first over to you. I mean, you've written a lot of novels, a lot of books. Is this the first time you've co-authored a novel with someone? And if so, why did you choose that gentleman in the middle?
Well, no, it's not actually. I did two espionage thrillers with Valerie Plame.
Oh,
That was my first fiction collaboration, and those are spy books. So, and Valerie was a CIA knock with non-official cover, and she was outed during the Bush administration. So that was my first experience with collaboration, and many agents and many publishers and many people in the mix. So coming back to work with Ron now in collaboration has been fun. It's been very fun. So we're old friends.
I can imagine. What about you, Ron? Have you co-authored
Yeah,
novels with others?
not novels, but I've certainly co-authored quite a bit. Um, I co-wrote He-Man and the Masters in the Universe, the episodes we did of He-Man. But no, I prefer working in collaboration, but I will say that this collaboration with Sarah has been the best. We get along, we laugh, we know how to get down to work. I respect her, and hopefully she respects me as well. And it's been a really great partnership.
How did you decide to focus on Myanmar as your first collaborative novel together?
It's a good question. This was a book that was inspired by International Bridges to Justice, who's done a lot of work around the world, and one of their success stories had always been in Myanmar, and then it fell apart. And we thought that would be an interesting place to start this series, uh, because it is mysterious, because it is so dark, um, and that and Karen was the woman who is um, the head of the organization, uh, was fine with it. So we decided to go ahead.
The head of the organization that we've modeled, Kay Zhang, on and Article 5.
Right. And what's the name?
International Bridges to Justice, and we encourage people to donate to their work because they're what they say is that they're about restoring the rule of law and ending torture as an investigative tool. And that's the work they do, and they do it. They've done it in a lot of places, and they've certainly reduced that torture. They've created a process that actually works.
Right. And what's the name of the series that you both are writing together?
Kay Zhang.
Yes, a Kay Zhang human rights thriller. This is book 1.
Right. And you have others planned down the line, I presume.
Yep, we have begun. At least we've titled the next one, and we're moving forward on it.
Fire Leopard.
Fire Leopard. Okay.
You start to see the elements of the title, right?
And how much can you say about that second book to our viewers?
Well, I don't think we're prepared to say much. We're still in the process of figuring out where we want to be with that, and that partly involves our conversations with International Bridges to Justice.
Although we will be focusing, I think, hopefully, putting a focus on women's rights in the human rights arena.
Excellent, excellent. Now, Ron, you were mentioning that you were trying to kind of give a new genre label to some of the books that you're writing now, and that even I am writing and others are writing, called renegade fiction. How far have you spread that around?
It's still in its infancy, but it's the notion is that so many of these genres are prescribed by others, and having always been a bit of a renegade, as I think Scott Leckie has been as well, and Sarah Lovett to a certain degree, I think it provides a genre that is without boundaries and that allows for things to mix and match. And I think that's one of the things that we've heard about Metal Viper is that people find that it's not a straight thriller or a traditional thriller. It is it mixes lots of things, and in terms of pathos and in terms of human rights and things like this that are not that get play, but maybe don't get as much play as we give it.
Right. And, hopefully, I think through fiction, people can read about non-fictional realities in the world in a way that it just won't do on a normal daily basis. So, Sarah, maybe you can just give a brief outline of what the story actually is and how it unfolds and what can readers look forward to.
The story was inspired by actually a real story, but it begins with a poet baker and his son, Vika, who's 12 years old, and they're arrested. This is, a baker who puts his poems into his bakings, his offerings, and it posts them on the wall. Very peaceful, gentle words, right, and poems, and this fires up the Tatmadaw, the regime, and so they are imprisoned in insane, the real prison, aptly named, and Kay and her team, Kay Zhang, are in Geneva. That's their headquarters, and they hear of this very quickly. So in the thriller pacing, we launch into this, and within a chapter or two, they're figuring out how they're going to rescue the boy, and that is what drives them over the border of Thailand into Myanmar. And they take the landway in a car, and so we get a chance to see the landscape and enter the country and the other world, so to speak, right, by land. And and their main opposition is the Viper. And he was based, as you know, loosely based on someone who has risen to great power. And it's very interesting to me because Kay is, like the woman she's based on, is a very gentle, no guns person and very savvy at reading people and maneuvering and managing to weave and survive in and out of with people who are very powerful. So it goes against the grain of thrillers where we have a bunch of guys with guns, right? Burly guns. And it's a very varied and eccentric team she takes in with her. And so the bulk of the book is then getting Vika out. I'm not going to give you any spoilers, except we do hear that elephants are they're people's favorites. So
Right.
I happen to love elephants. So yeah.
We discovered that if you show an elephant in Act 1, you better use it in Act 3. But it's an old writing adage.
Well, Scott knows it, I'm sure.
But it's, this is we're being a little cagey about describing the organization because they still have people on the ground in Myanmar, and they're a little concerned that about folks in the folks in the Myanmar regime hearing about them and doing something about it.
They want to keep their people safe, right? Of course.
So we're still a little cagey in terms of what we're trying to talk when we talk about them and talk about her.
And that's changed, Scott. It's been an interesting challenge, one of those things, because the news we get from Geneva can shift, right, depending on what's going on in a country or with, a certain operation they're undertaking somewhere. So we have to be flexible in our writing, be able to change lanes a little bit.
Sure. And for viewers that aren't aware, Burma, Myanmar got independence in 1948. They had a semblance of democracy until 1962, and then they had a full-scale military dictatorship from 1962 to 2011. Then they had this brief window of partial democracy from 2011 till 2021, at which point the current regime in power, the military again, pulled off a military coup after getting wiped out again in the latest election. And they maintain complete and total control today, except for those parts of the country which are under the control of one or another of the many, many, many ethnic armed groups and other uh, guerrilla units, basically, non state actors who control territory in an increasingly large part of the country. So it is as unstable as can be. It's a situation of all out civil war. It's countless. It's not side A versus side B. It's side, 135 versus 135. It's just a constant, uh, hodgepodge of battles and skirmishes and air war, land war, sea war, everything.
Yeah, it's a tremendous amount of suffering. It really is a tremendous amount of suffering that they've put themselves through. And we see this in the number of people who are killed. We see this in the number of people who are displaced. We're seeing this throughout the country, and it's really awful. I mean, and of course, parallels to other authoritarian governments are easy to make. And we did to a certain degree because they and they're relevant. And so what we've discovered with this book is there's not only an immediacy to the story, but there's a relevancy to what the story is about and how people and governments think they have the right to treat people. And this is really, and it as in our story, it begins with the intelligentsia. It begins with the writers. It begins with the poets, which makes me nuts. Because how do a poet is, you know, how does that happen? That a poet
And
could
a
be
baker.
and a baker could be that, it could be that worried. Although I will say that one of the wonderful things about Vika's father as a poet is in order to get his poems out, he wraps his daily bread that he sells to his customers in the poems, and which I think is a great way of distributing poetry.
And one thing we left out was this happens fairly early. Vika writes a poem himself about the experiences, and that poem goes viral. And that enrages those in power, that this 12-year-old boy can have a platform around the world. And I do think I find it fascinating. Um, one of the things in research too, we found, and this is true, I think, in, many, many places, the children of those in power often lead a life in Europe or, somewhere in the kind of jet set world, right? And they, um, in certain cases, they were trying to influence those high up in the regime to ease off some because they were getting rejected by, some of their peers. And I think social media does so many things badly and accelerates things, but it also can be an influence of amazing change and for good sometimes.
Well, that's really true. And, the the current leader of North Korea, for instance, was educated in Switzerland, for tons of examples that we can give. They never stick close to home, and then they eventually, once they've learned all there is to learn, they go back and exert their authoritarian control. And I think one of the things about the book that was, really excellent, among many things, is that it really shows in a, minute, minute by minute way what life is like when you live in under a dictatorship, in a non-democratic, authoritarian-led regime. It's not just this nebulous concept. It affects kind of every minute of your day in one way or another, and it culminates in basically the phrase, "Oh, no, I can't call anyone for assistance because there's no one to call." And that's kind of like in an authoritarian government situation. If somebody tries to steal your property, who are you gonna call? There's no one to call because those are the guys stealing your property. If there's somebody that's imprisoning you arbitrarily, there's no one to call. You can't even access a lawyer. Your water, it gets turned off, can't call anyone. Your wages go down, can't call anyone. The list goes on and on and on. And I think it really captures, the essence of that, the horrors. It's one thing to say, oh, it's an authoritarian regime now. Oh, it's an extreme right wing regime now. Oh, it's a dictatorship. But you really have to break it down into the minute by minute chunks by which the people who are under the yoke of those powers have to live. And it's utterly brutal. And for those of us who live in a state of freedom or relative freedom, in relative democracies, I think the one where I'm speaking from is slightly stronger than the one where you're speaking from. It's up to us to remember how much good fortune we have, and that it's also up to us to draw attention, as you have with Metal Viper, to the circumstances of the 60 million people living in Burma, and ultimately the hundreds of millions, if not billions, of people across the world right now who are living under various forms of autocracy.
Yeah, we certainly hope that that message, gets out, and the telling of this story is, seen on a broader like screen, if you will, so that more people are seeing it, and that it is because it does relate. It is not the same, but it does relate, and I think that that's important that we can't be afraid to look at these things. And that's the thing that is and that's what they're counting on. They, being the authoritarian government, is that you're so afraid you won't say anything. And, it's a problem with this. It's like not being able to call anybody. It's at the same time that if you say anything, they're gonna come after you. And you once said to me something, Scott, that I loved, is you said, "They're usually so dumb they only find out about these things when they fall into them, that they don't know that they exist until they've already till it bumps them in the head. And so, we can only count on that to a certain degree.
One more thing is that we're both very curious and excited to, write the next book and the next book, um, because, that constant desire to learn and to um, break through, resist. There's signs all over my neighborhood, resist. And, but what we've also done, I worked with an author on Myanmar, on, the conflict in Myanmar, and that was one of the hardest things I ever worked on. And that was nonfiction. So I'll say with this, one of the joys is putting it in thriller form. It's kind of that spoonful of sugar or whatever you want to say, because we can take care of the reader and make it a fun read.
And I think the heart comes out. I think the heart of the characters and the humanity of the characters really comes forward. These are not cardboard figures. They're not cutouts. These are real people who are involved in, fairly awful situations, but they respond as people. And that's what Sarah and I have really tried to do, is to make them as believable as possible and the story as thrilling as possible. It is a page turner. I mean, it is that, but at the same time, it's filled with heart, and that's what Sarah and I bring to the table.
Absolutely. And I can attest to the fact that, any interested reader can relate to pretty much every character from a personal perspective, right? So you can see, I mean, the way you capture the essence of evil and the bad guys, so to speak, is crystal clear. But even more so, the side of compassion and just basic humanity and care by many of the protagonists. So for just as a little final message to those people out there who don't read that much anymore, what is it about Metal Viper that might get them back into reading? What do you think?
It's fun. It's
Yeah,
it it
love, it's fun, it's a work of love, and, but also exciting and fun and
right,
cinematic. So, yeah,
yeah.
and great
It
characters. If you like you were saying, Scott, I love team I watch series that are team series. I love characters, so and we have that. So, yeah, and
yeah.
a little
We have
magic.
we have a great team and always a little magic. Always a little magical realism has to sneak in there and and come forward because it you never know what's going to emerge. And that's that aspect of, what can emerge naturally into a story that you don't expect, and at the same time is absolutely plausible and believable, and I think that's what we've tried to cover.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So where can people find Metal Viper nowadays?
Well, you can always find it at Amazon, and you can find in the United States, you can find it at any bookstore that, carries books.
Fine bookstores.
There's some there's a question about, right? But no, it is available wherever books are sold, as they say.
Excellent. Well, any final words on Metal Viper, my friends, before we call it a day today?
Buy it.
I wanna say, may the bad guys, get karma.
Absolutely. Well, let's hope that this new genre of renegade fiction, of which Metal Viper forms a key part, really becomes something, because I certainly hope it does, and think it will, because the information is out there for anyone who wants to find it about any bad situation in the world, in any sector, whether it's nuclear arms or climate change or military oppression. It's there, but nobody reads it virtually. A handful of people read it. And, I know it's your hope, it's certainly my hope that this treating a non-fictional world in a fictional way is a way to grab people and get them interested in, real world suffering, which is going on this very second that whoever you are watching this, there are millions of people in Burma who are not able to live the full lives that they deserve to live because of the political situation in that country. And that just should simply not exist there or anywhere else. All 8 billion of us deserve a lot better than most of us are getting. And it's certainly my hope that Metal Viper and books of a similar nature really have an impact in changing the real world.
Great.
So,
Right.
Well, thank you, Scott.
Thank
Raj,
you.
thank you. Sarah, love it. Thank you very much. Congratulations on your magnificent tome. And we'll be with you soon. Thanks for watching. There it is again. Thanks for watching Democracy Tomorrow. We'll be back soon with another episode. Please like and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.